Today, we're diving into the government's economic toolkit. You can think of it as the gas and brake pedals for the entire country's economy. We're going to explore how these tools are used to steer us through all the ups and downs. So, have you ever wondered about that? Imagine the economy is a car. Sometimes it's stalling out, and other times it feels like it's just careening out of control. So, how does the government get into the driver's seat and manage all this? Well, the answer is something called fiscal policy. You see, the government's main economic controls, they all fall under this one big umbrella, fiscal policy. This is really their primary way of steering the economy, trying to make sure it doesn't veer off course into a ditch.
Now, the key word here is deliberate. You got to remember that. Fiscal policy isn't some accident. It's a series of really intentional, calculated moves that involve how the government spends money and how it taxes us, all aimed at hitting a very specific economic goal.
So, how does this actually work in practice? Well, the government has two main approaches. You've got expansionary policy, which is basically the gas pedal. It's designed to speed things up. And then you have contractionary policy, which is the brake, used to slow the economy down. Two very different tools for two very different situations. All right, let's take our first scenario. The economic car is stalling. It's in a slump. This is a situation that economists have a name for. They call it a recessionary gap. And look, this isn't just some number on a chart. It has real-world consequences we all feel. The country's economic output, its GDP, is actually shrinking. More people are losing their jobs. And when people are worried about their jobs, they spend less money, which, you guessed it, just makes everything worse. It's a real downward spiral. So, when the economy is stuck like this, what do? Well, you hit the gas. The government needs to inject some energy back into the system and get things moving again. This is exactly where expansionary fiscal policy comes into play. The goal is pretty straightforward: get people and businesses to start spending money again. Economists call this boosting aggregate demand, which is really just a fancy way of saying the total spending on everything in the entire economy. So, what are the tools? There are two main levers to pull here. First, the government can cut taxes. That leaves more money in our pockets, which hopefully will go out to spend. Second, the government can just increase its own spending on things like building new roads or funding public services. That pumps money directly into the economy and creates jobs. But there's always a catch, isn't there? When the government is collecting less money from taxes and spending more, it often leads to what's called a budget deficit. Put simply, it's spending more money than it's bringing in. Okay, so let's flip this around and look at the total opposite problem. What happens when the economy isn't stalling, but it's actually overheating? It's going way too fast. This is what's known as an inflationary gap. The economy is growing so fast that everyone wants to buy stuff, but there isn't enough stuff to go around. That causes prices to shoot up. Suddenly, your grocery bill is higher, gas costs more, you get the picture. You might even see asset bubbles, where things like stocks or real estate get dangerously overpriced. Basically, the economy is running way too hot. You can't just let the engine burn out, right? This is when the government needs to step in, gently pump the brakes, and try to guide the economy back to a safer, more sustainable speed. The tool for this job is contractionary fiscal policy. And the goal here is to restrain or contract the economy. It's the exact opposite of what we saw before. The whole point is to reduce total spending. So the levers are simply reversed. The government can increase taxes, which takes money out of our pockets and discourages spending, or it can cut its own spending, which directly pulls money out of the economy. Now, the upside here is that it can actually be good for the government's finances. By collecting more money in taxes and spending less, the government can run a budget surplus, bringing in more money than it spends. So as you can see, fiscal policy isn't about picking one tool and just sticking with it forever. It's a constant balancing act. It's like a delicate dance between the gas and the brakes, all to keep that economic car on a steady path. Here's the whole idea in a nutshell. When you're facing a recession, the government uses expansionary tools, cutting taxes, raising spending, to boost the economy. When you're dealing with crazy inflation, it uses contractionary tools, raising taxes, cutting spending, to cool things down. The problem always dictates the solution. So, what are the big takeaways here? First, fiscal policy is how the government uses taxes and spending to steer the economy. Second, expansionary policy is like hitting the gas to fight a recession. Third, contractionary policy is pumping the brakes to fight inflation. And finally, the ultimate goal of all this is to find that stable middle path,
to avoid the huge problems of high unemployment on one side and soaring prices on the other.
It's a powerful set of tools, at least in theory. But timing these moves perfectly is incredibly difficult. And let's be honest, politics often gets in the way. Which kind of leads to the real question here. In a world with a super complex global economy, can these simple gas and brake pedals really navigate every single twist and turn on the road ahead? That's definitely something to think about.